Al comienzo de cada año, durante los últimos 4 años, he hecho mi resolución del año nuevo, aprender el español. Y cada año he fallado a lograrlo. Pero este año es diferente. What did I just say? So you hear me flowing in Spanish? Okay, well, what I was trying to tell you is that, like at the beginning of each year, for the last few years, I've committed to making this resolution to learn Spanish. And every year, it seems that I fall short, I fail, and I make that same resolution each year. But this year, something's a little bit different, obviously, right? Learning Spanish has been a challenge over these last few years, but I think it's because I really didn't have a very clear purpose in learning the language other than trying to convince people that I wasn't as whitewashed as I am, which is not a very compelling reason, right? Well, that was until a friend of mine helped me realize that I'm just this close to having the ability to communicate with the growing population of people here in our community. I had read an article, and it was kind of an older one, I think from 2014, that said something like half of the children in our Forest Grove School District are Hispanic. And I thought, man, that is a lot of people that I could be reaching if only I learn Spanish. And so now that I know why it's important for me to learn Spanish and the value of it, I'm excited to dive into my lessons each week. And so I've been doing pretty well with it. Now, a man by the name of Simon Sinek, he wrote a book called Start With Why. Many of you may have watched his TED Talk. If not, I would encourage you to look it up. It's really good. But anyway, the whole idea of his book is to communicate the importance of defining the why behind all of the many things that we do in this life. This is a truth that I've tried to live out in my own life, try to instill in my kids. But here's what he's getting at. Everyone has a why. He says, your why is the purpose, the cause, or belief that inspires you. And knowing your why gives you a filter to make choices at work and at home that'll help you find greater fulfillment in all that you do. When we discover our why, we're better able to find the clarity and the confidence to choose the careers or the organizations or relationships and opportunities that are most likely to inspire us. So again, because I didn't have a very compelling why behind learning Spanish, it was really easy for me to let it fall off of my list of priorities. And it wasn't really until I defined the why that I was able to find the power to motivate me to action. So now I'm just that much more convinced that in anything we do, whether it's personally or professionally, it's important for us to clarify the why behind the reason we do the things that we do. Because if we don't do that, what happens is we'll lack purpose and we're going to lack intentionality in the decisions that we make, and we're going to find ourselves wandering about aimlessly through this life, guided by our constantly changing circumstances or the opinions of people, the fickle opinions of people, which is just really no way to live. So for example, if you apply this principle to relationships, if you're in a relationship that's unfulfilling, maybe it's unhealthy and even destructive, and you've done everything within your power to try to address the issues, but you still feel stuck, maybe you need to really ask why you are with that person. Is it simply because it was convenient? Is it because you don't feel like you can get any better, or you're afraid to be alone? Why? Why are you with that person? Or in the case of a job that you can't stand and that you hate, maybe it's time to really ask yourself, why am I even doing this job? Is it simply because you fell into it, or it pays the bills, or if I don't stick with it, well, I'm going to disappoint my dad or my family or whatever it may be? In both of these examples, clarifying the why is going to help you make informed, purposeful decisions, and you'll find the power to follow through on them. And so again, in anything we do personally, professionally, or together as a church family, it's important to clarify why we do what we do. And so because of that, over the next few weeks, I want to clarify the why that lies behind the heart of what we do as Old Town Church. And I know you've seen these 4 words, scattered around this facility or on things that we send you, this connect, grow, serve, lead. But what does that actually mean? One of the things I really think I need to do a better job of is to more consistently communicate the why behind what drives me and what drives my staff and what drives many of you who volunteer your time, energy, and all your efforts to serving our community in ways that sometimes seem, or sometimes maybe actually are, a little unconventional. So the vision of Old Town Church is to lead people in a growing relationship with Christ. That is our vision statement. I love it because it's biblical. It's right out it comes from Jesus and this great commission that we find in Matthew 28 to go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, right? And then teaching them to obey all that Jesus commanded us. So that's awesome. It's our goal to help you grow in your relationship with Christ to the degree that it deepens and then pours out onto others, and you lead them to know who Christ is, and then rinse and repeat. Disciples making disciples. That's our vision. That's our mission. But as much as we're all about leading people in a growing relationship with Christ and making disciples, the vision statement doesn't quite communicate the why that motivates me and my staff to make some of the ministry choices that we do. Why do we want to lead people in a growing relationship with Christ? Again, it's important to know that, and fortunately, it's not all that complicated. I sat down this week to really try to clarify it. Really what I think it comes down to, the why that drives everything that we do here at Old Town Church is that we believe wholeheartedly the words of the Apostle Paul found in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, which is that Jesus Christ and the good news about who he is and what he's done for you and for me and for the rest of the world through his death and resurrection, that has the power to radically transform our lives and to save us in every way that a person can be saved. I'm not ashamed of this good news about Christ because it is the power of God at work saving everyone who believes. In the original Greek language, the word that's translated here is saved. It's a word, soteria, or something like that, which means much more than just being saved from HU double hockey sticks, although it most definitely means that, and that's one of the benefits. But salvation means a lot more in the Greek language than what is communicated here in our English translations. If you look at the Strong's Concordance, here's how this word soteria is defined. It says it means rescue, it means safety, and this means physically, morally, or spiritually. It's deliverance, it's health, it's salvation, it's well-being, as well as preservation from danger of destruction. As much as we believe that the good news of Jesus Christ is going to impact our life in the age to come, I'm absolutely confident, and I'm also living proof, that it also has the impact to change our life right here and right now on this earth. Some of you, because I know you and I know some of your stories, some of you sitting in this room are former alcoholics. Some of you were horrible drug addicts. Some of you were criminals, swindlers, and some of you were even God haters, atheists. Some of you were once like that, but you were cleansed and you were made holy. You were made right with God by calling on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of God. Man, remember where you were before you met Jesus? Remember how jacked up it was? I sometimes think back on where God pulled me out from it. I shudder to think where I would be if not for the saving power of Christ. And you guys can relate to that, I know. See, because of Jesus, we've both been transformed and we continue to be transformed into the image of Christ. And he's rescued us from slavery to sin as well as the consequences of sin, which is death. And that is why we do what we do and why we go to great lengths to reach outside these walls and do some silly things within these walls, like dodgeball tournaments, in order to reach this community with the love of Jesus. There is purpose. We're not just doing it to mess about. Believe me, this is what drives us to do stuff like that. This is what allowed us to bring some 150, 60, 80 people into a church building where they would never darken the doors otherwise. Anyway, see, we understand that we are on a rescue mission and that what we do as a church is a matter of life and death. See, but the thing is, most churches would probably say that their why is the same as ours. They would say that they believe that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. They would say that they are on a rescue mission to save sinners from destruction. So, if that is the case, then why then are churches in this country closing and shutting their doors at an alarming rate? See, back in the 50s, more than half of all Americans were attending church. More than half. This is from the University of Southern California. During the 1950s, nationwide church membership grew at a faster rate than the population, from 57% of the U.S. population in 1950 to 63.3% in 1960. Man, that is a lot of people. 63% of Americans were going to church. Well, times have changed, baby, because listen to this. This is from December, this article. This is fresh statistics here and information. This is the most recent data that says only 17.7% of Americans attend church. 17, from 63 to 17%. And they were trying to be generous. They said, okay, fine, well, if you want to include those who sometimes attend like at Easter and Christmas, it bumps the number up to 23%, but we know that I wouldn't count that as a regular attender at all. See, throughout our nation's history, going to church, that was a cultural norm. That's just people did that. They shut down town so folks could go to church. But times have changed. We're not living in the 50s anymore. And our country, as we all are witness to, has slowly abandoned its Christian roots. And there's been this dramatic shift in the United States where this culture no longer assumes or respects a Christian worldview, which is incredibly sad because we see everyday people who are in desperate need of hope and life and joy and peace and acceptance and all of those things. And we know who can give them what it is that they're looking for. But unfortunately, this nation is rejecting God's messenger, the church. Why is that? I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers because I really don't. Otherwise, we would be a mega church. Okay, so I don't know all the answers, but I tell you, my staff and I, we do have an idea of what's been working for us. Now, first of all, I want to give all credit to God because He's the one building His church, and it's only by His unmerited grace and favor that we've seen the kind of growth that we've seen. It's totally God, because Pastor Zach and I and our team, we'd look at each other like, what happened? I thought the Super Bowl, this defies what folks would say out there. Oh, Super Bowl, trust me, ain't nobody going to be there. What? It doesn't even make sense. So we look at each other like, okay, I don't know, man. I give up. I don't know what's happening here. But, so it's God and His Holy Spirit. But I will say that some of what we're doing has been intentional. And I believe that the growth that we've seen in the short amount of time that we've been in existence has something to do with those 4 words that I mentioned earlier: connect, grow, serve, lead. Those words form our strategy for accomplishing our vision here at Old Town Church. We want people to connect in intimacy with God. We want people to grow in their relationship with God and others. We want people to be serving the needs of the least, the last, and the lost without strings attached. And then we want you to lead others into that relationship with Christ, and then, again, rinse and repeat, and so it's disciples making disciples. And we've been doing that here in Forest Grove since September 11th of 2011, 6 years. And it's been working for us, again, by the grace of God. But again, all you have to do, and I did do this, do a Google search and see how many hundreds, maybe thousands of churches use these same 4 words as their strategy. I think we bit this from Andy Stanley. So, I mean, it's not original to us, and hundreds of other churches operate under the same strategy. And yet, as I showed you, many of those churches are struggling to keep their doors open. Why? What's happening here? Why are you here? Why are we growing this way? Well, I believe that there are some common obstacles that every church, including this one, if we don't stay on point, will have to continually push through and address in order to grow and effectively reach people who desperately need Jesus. And so what are those obstacles? That's what I want to talk about. I probably failed to mention that I'm going to be spending the next 3 weeks, well, 4, including this one, on going through Connect, Grow, Serve, Lead, each one by itself. Today I'm talking about Connect. And so briefly, I want to talk about some of the obstacles that get in the way of people connecting with God. So let me start with what I think is a big one. A lot of churches, unfortunately, are using outdated methods, and I'm going to tag onto this, that there's an unwillingness to change. They just do what they've always done because that's what they've always done. See, churches that refuse to adjust to the changing times they're going to get left behind. We see it again. Our culture has changed and continues to change drastically and rapidly. And if we want to effectively communicate the good news of Jesus Christ to a lost world, well, then we're going to have to adjust the way that we present and communicate that message to this generation. And that's the thing, that I understand that change is not easy. Change is incredibly difficult. Change is scary. Now, I just this week learned that there's one church growth strategist, a brilliant guy, who knows something about how to grow a church. He says, and this is his opinion, I don't know if it's true, but he says that we are actually not too far from the day where people won't come to church. The church will come to them. Well, that's dumb. Isn't the whole purpose of the church to come together? And, I don't like that. That's a scary, dumb prospect. But the thing is, he's onto something. Think about how many of you did your Christmas shopping without even setting foot in Washington Square or Walmart? Well, come on, y'all are lying. Whatever. I know that most people, you're just being shy. I'm telling you, the malls are empty these days. Malls are closing down just in droves because nobody's going to that. If you had a choice of going to Washington Square Mall, fighting all those jerks, or just, I'm going to click on the thing and it's there tomorrow and I didn't even have to pay extra. I know you guys are going to choose Amazon. So would I. So do we do that. Well, this is only going to increase in this digital internet age that we live in. It makes sense that things would kind of go in that direction. As we become more connected on the internet, it actually creates more space and distance between us. It's a scary thing. But what am I going to do? Just be scared and go, oh, no, well, I'm going to kick against the goads, and that's not going to happen here. We will get left. So, in spite of my fear, that's why I can be I drive these guys nuts because all the video, it looks pixelated, and it's not I'm trying to do that because I know that it has to be, we're trying to reach an audience through the internet these days. And so those who are unwilling to change are going to get left behind. In this book that I was mentioning earlier with Simon Sinek, he uses Kodak as an example of an organization that essentially failed because they underestimated the digital camera. This is a company, and some of you know this, whose name actually, Ava, do you know who Kodak is, babe? Who's Kodak? That's what I thought. She don't even know what Kodak is. All right, Kodak, those of us who grew up, the 70s, 80s, Kodak was synonymous with the memorable moments of our lives. When your kids took their first steps, blam, that was a Kodak moment. Right. See, you guys know. And those who are like 14 and below are like, I don't know what Kodak is, I don't care. But to your credit, I went to has nothing to do with this, but Ava was saying she was getting something for Hannah's birthday. And she wanted to print out some photos. I go, baby, I got an hour to wait for photos to be developed and all that. She goes, an hour? What do you mean, Father? I go, I don't know, doesn't it take like an hour to print them? She went up to the machine and plugged her phone in, and the pictures popped out. Did you know that happens? I need to get with it. I'm going to get left behind, man. We used to have to wait an hour, babe, for pictures to be developed. Some of you older folks, it was in a dark room and like stirring the red water. Some of you, it was just pictures on a cave. Like, son, turn to your side. All right. Anyway. The 11 o'clock service is loosey-goosey. All right. Anyhow. Where was I? Anyway. So what happened to Kodak? Okay, well, this is from Forbes magazine. All right. Forbes said Kodak, they didn't fail because it missed the digital age. It actually invented the first digital camera in 1975. Wow. However, instead of marketing this new technology, they held back. They sat on this technology for years. Why? Because of fear. For fear of hurting their precious, lucrative film business. Even after digital products were reshaping the market, they were so concerned about protecting their film business, which was quickly going out of style and becoming obsolete. They were trying to protect that, and they, because of that, missed the boat and lost the opportunity to reach untold millions of people with their products. Well, I think that a lot of churches are suffering from the same thing. I think that they're being held back by fear of losing what they already have, and so they're like in this defensive position, me, mine, stay away, protecting what they already have. They don't want to change and adapt, and so they play it safe. They do what they've always done, which most of the things that they do are as outdated as film. George Barna, he said that the Apostle Paul provided what is perhaps the single most insightful perspective on marketing communications. And then what does he do? He references 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 through 23, where the Apostle Paul famously says that he will become all things to all people so that by all means he might save some. Many of you are familiar with that. But I want you to listen to the Message version of this same verse. I love this, man. This is awesome. The Message verse. Even though I'm a free man with no master, I have voluntarily become a servant to any and all in order to reach a wide range of people, religious, non-religious, meticulous moralists, loose-living immoralists. But doesn't it say that, friends with the world is enmity toward God? James chapter 4, verse 4. That's what some folks will say, and they get left. Loose-living moralists, the defeated, the demoralized, whoever. They didn't take on their way of life. That's an important component. In the world, but not of it. But the Apostle Paul says, look, I didn't take on their way of life. I kept my bearings in Christ, but I entered their world, and I tried to experience things from their point of view. I become just about every sort of servant there is in my attempts to lead those I meet into a God-saved life, and I did it all because of the message. I didn't just want to talk about it, I wanted to be in on it. And so why did George Barna say that this portion of Scripture is the single most insightful perspective on marketing communications? Well, because the Apostle Paul knew that in order to effectively spread the message of the gospel out to the world, that he'd have to adjust and adapt his communication according to the different people that he was trying to reach out to. And I believe that we must be willing to do the same thing. Let me get on to the next thing, which I won't belabor this next point, because I don't really believe that Old Town Church suffers from this. But I believe that one of the things that keeps people from connecting to this God who loves them is critical, judgmental, condescending Christians. Whoa, see all them like, yep, totally. And that's why you're here is like, yeah. It's really sad, but a lot of churches, the message is, turn or burn, get right or get left. One of the biggest barriers that keeps people, unbelieving world, from coming to Jesus, I think, is judgmental, condescending Christians who love pointing their fingers at other people's sins while failing to see how jacked up they are. That's why Jesus said, take the log out of your own eye before you ever try to step to somebody and take the little speck that's in their eye. Man, how many of us know that person? Like, oh, they're so... Anyway, I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not going to belabor the point. But I love this statement from the Apostle Paul. This is him, 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. Paul says, here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. Wow, really? Full acceptance? What's that? That Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the worst. Wow, man. Can you hear the humility in the statement from the Apostle Paul? This man was the bomb. This guy was more righteous than all of us put together, the Apostle Paul. And yet he's saying, you know, trust me, I'm not, guy. I'm the worst of sinners. Because he's like, I know me. I know my heart. That's so humble. If most Christians would simply lead with that, saying, listen, man, I don't got my thing together. That's how I try to communicate up here. Some people don't like that. They want the pastor to have all his stuff together. Now, trust me, I'm way better than I was. And and my family, they can attest to that. And my staff, there's accountability. So you can bet that I'm not content to just stay stuck in stuff. And it cuts both ways. So I don't want to communicate that my life's a mess. But I come up here trying to say, look, I'm just like you guys. I got the struggle. I'm imperfect. Sometimes I blow it, believe it or not, babe? So, you know what I mean? And when you lead like that, people can relate to you, which allows you to clearly communicate the love and the grace and mercy of Christ, who, man, if he can love me and transform me, he can most definitely do it for you. And so I love these words from the Apostle Paul. And I really think that if more Christians demonstrated that kind of humility, recognizing that they don't have all their stuff together, people would want to hear our message. We need to be a church that reflects the love of Jesus. This man who met people where they were, and he loved them without conditions. In Mark chapter 2, we have the story of when Jesus was invited to have dinner over at this guy named Levi's house. And it says this: Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. And then it says this: there were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. But when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such scum? When Jesus heard this, he told them, it's because healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. And I've come to call not those who think they're all righteous, but those who know that they are sinners. Again, that was Paul's heart. And so like Jesus, we need to find creative ways to meet people where they are, as they are, and not as we want them to be. Sometimes that's going to cause certain religious people to raise an eyebrow. Trust me, I've had my fair share of those. So be it. Lastly, one of the things that keep people from connecting, I think, to God is that folks leaving it up to the pastor to do the work of sharing the gospel. That's how church has been for the last however many years. The pastor does all the work of evangelizing, and folks show up and hear a message, and then they go home and go about their business. That's not the way that God intended it to be. Each one of us has a responsibility as a Christ follower to share him with the people that we come in contact with. That is our responsibility, to connect people to God. We want to connect with this community. You guys are the connectors. I'm just one guy. And the other thing is, like week after week, I mean, you got to look around you sometime and because not a lot of churches even have this. You have old people, we have young people, college students, you got Mexican, we got black, we got Asian, we got all sorts of shapes and sizes and different economic, statuses represented here. All of us together are the church, and each one of us are uniquely shaped to minister to certain people. You can reach people that I can't. And on the other hand, I can reach people that you can't, particularly now that I'm learning me some Espanol. See? And it's a good thing we get to reach more people like that. See, the problem with expecting that the pastor is going to do all the evangelizing is that I'm just one guy living within my own limited scope of experience and knowledge and culture. And so the reality is if it's all left up to me, well, then I can only be some things to some people. But together we can reach more. So the world, and I'm closing with this, okay? I'm saying all of this, communicating to you our vision as clearly as I can. And that's why I'm probably going a little bit long, because this is important, particularly when I have this many folks here. I mean, I want to make sure that I really communicate this clearly. But the reason is it's so important because this world is all bound up. This world is sin sick and corrupted and dying. And if not reconciled to God, we don't like to talk about this. I don't even like to talk about it. But the reality is they are on their way to hell. And I know, again, that we don't like to talk about that. But every day, people who reject God, some of them are people that we love and care about, are stepping further and further and further away from God. And if we don't actively work toward reaching out to them with the good news that they have been reconciled to God through the death and resurrection of Christ, they are going to be faced with this unimaginable prospect of God's judgment on the other side of this thing. And again, I don't like to talk about it, but it's the truth. And knowing that, how can we stay silent? I almost wasn't going to share this. Even though I shared it with the last service, I even thought, again, maybe I should not share this. And it's nothing bad. It's just something personal and something that maybe I'm still processing. Charlene was telling me, I think I maybe still feel guilt for it, and I think it's probably true. But anyhow, most of you know that I had a younger brother named Bobby. And he died when he accidentally shot himself. I was 17, he was 16. He would be celebrating his 43rd birthday this Wednesday. That's crazy to me. Well, one of the biggest regrets that I have, is that I knew that he had that gun for 2 weeks before he had it, and I didn't say anything to him. I should have. You know, the brothers have this bond, particularly in that like hood mentality. Oh, you don't want to rat out on your dog and all that stupidity. And so I didn't say anything. And man, if I could turn back the hands of time. Anyway, knowing all the pain and the loss that our family and Bobby experienced, I mean, it could have been avoided if I would have just said something. It's hard to deal with, but the reality is my silence, it was costly. I don't want to own more than I should, but the reality is I should have said something. If someone that we love is in danger, we should say something, right? And so why don't we? Why is it always left to the pastor to carry the burden when it's really all of our responsibility to be doing that? It's a difficult thing. It's a real weight that I carry. That, man, I'm not meeting with enough people. It blessed my heart last night to just see Pastor Jason and his whole worship team and the AV team all meeting together. And I thought, oh God, thank you. Like, I got people who are doing it and meeting together. So it's happening. But it could be happening more. Why are we remaining silent? There's no reasonable excuse for us to not share the truth about who Jesus is with those who we know and those who we love. And I know it may be embarrassing to speak about or may cause people to roll their eyes at you, but the cost for not speaking up, as Jesus clearly said, is even greater. And it's not that difficult. I mean, it could be as simple as I post the sermons online, share it. I know that some people don't like to do that because, what do people think? What would it be like to just share the thing? Saying, hey, here's a message that was shared. Maybe it'll mean something to you. And somebody is going to say, well, I didn't even know you were a Christian. Or, hey, well, what church do you go to? And it opens up a conversation, opens up a door. So, I mean, it could be something as simple as that, or invite them to church. Do something. So many gifts and talents represented here, and so many opportunities to get people connected with this wonderful God who loves us. Again, one of the most loving things that we can do is tell people the truth, not just about the judgment to come or the need to turn or else, but the truth about God's unconditional love and mercy for sinners of whom I am the worst. It's truly a matter of life and death, and we need to seek opportunities to communicate grace and truth to people that God places in our life. And so I hope as Old Town Church, as we move forward, that we will be people of action, actively seeking those who are in need of Christ.